Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I have got a complete rock star with me. Not only is this guy a man rocket, and for any women that may one day be listening to our podcast, this is definitely a show that you're going to be upset that we did not put pictures online, but you are going to want to Wikipedia this guy's ass because I'm telling you, this is the guy of all guys, the man of all men, who's not only an incredible athlete with an incredible background, but ladies, he's got salt and pepper. He's got personality. He's got perspective, and he's got a brain. So who am I talking about? I'm talking about my buddy Carlos Quentin. Thank you for being on our little podcast today, my man rocket friend. I'm going to pump your tires just for a few seconds. And unlike most people that I talk to, I really want to get into your head because I love your head. But we're talking about a guy who was a first-round draft pick to the Arizona Diamondbacks. You're a San Diego guy. And I guess when you went to high school, was your high school uni at the time? Was it
uni? Yes.
Yeah. So you're a
guy. Can
And
I interrupt you for a second and say
Yeah.
Thank you for that intro? That was incredible. I'm happy to be here. I just had to reply to that really quick. You're gonna go, and I just want to say thank you. That was more than I deserved.
Oh my God, my friend. Well, what makes you so amazing, right? Is not only did you play at a really great high school here, but you went on to Stanford. Oh my God, right? Like talk about the total package there. You're that guy. But you played 3 years at Stanford, and then you went to, I guess, College World Series, and you were up for incredible awards. The one that you were up for, which is the Golden Spikes, is that like close to Heisman? Is that like the Heisman of baseball?
Basically, for college sports, yes.
Yeah.
For college baseball.
For college baseball.
Yeah.
So then, from there, 9-year career. And I gotta just, be the stat geek a little bit. And I know you're the stat guy, but I mean, in that time frame, 834 games. Oh my God. I can't even think about what 834 games looks like. Man, I mean, that's a lot of showers. that's a lot of, we gotta get dressed up, guys. that's a lot, man. It's a lot. And your career stats are like stupid ridiculous, buddy. Like, I mean, 0.252, 154 home runs. I mean, close to 500 RBIs. I mean, dude, you're the guy that after the career should drop the mic and walk off the stage. So congratulations on an amazing career.
I appreciate it, Jay. You don't really pay attention to those stats. You read them off, and you're happy you did them. You always think you could do more, but no, it's been baseball was good to me, and I gave as much as myself I could to the game. So,
well, buddy, I'm so proud to just have you in my life. I'll leave it at that. And one of the things that we're going to just dive into is this. When we get onto this kind of conversations with athletes, I tend to ask them questions that are all about the head. Tell me about what it was like for you getting into the game. Talk about what it was like for you preparing for the game so that we can pass things on to kids, parents, coaches, whoever may be listening to us. And just like to share with you stats, like oddly enough, we're getting more and more listeners, which is great. So whoever's out there listening, God bless you. Tell more friends, because this is just fun for us to do. So one of the things that is so exciting for me to talk to you is to get right into our normal conversations. And what people are going to learn about you today is you're back in school, going to UCSD, and you're studying business, and you're an analytical guy. And it's one of the many things I love about you. And you're on the precipice here of, in my opinion, venturing into a project which is so powerful, so meaningful. And it's one of those topics in sport that we all know about, but we don't talk about. It's again, you're that guy. You're Superman who's flying in and saying, Dun, 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 dun. And ladies, trust me, this guy looks like Superman. You need to Wikipedia this guy. You have to. That's Carlos Quentin, Quentin with a Q. So can you please kind of get the ball rolling for us? Tell us about this project, which is a passion project for you, involved with baseball, but even deeper than that. It's, in my opinion, it's analytical, emotional science in my brain.
There we go. Well, I'd love to. And let me just start with just a little context of how I even kind of got to this kind of path. Is simply, after getting done playing, every player experiences this transition, right? And this kind of transition isn't filled. It's not exactly grand per se, because what you've done for your entire life is over. So your value is tested. So heading to school and getting back into class really allowed me to stimulate my mind again. But it also gave me an understanding of how far, or how much time I kind of miss with intellectual stimulation. So playing a game where you hit a white ball every single day doesn't necessarily stimulate you academically. That's obvious. But heading back to school, I was able to to quantify that growth, and by experiencing that growth, one, emotionally, mentally, it was so beneficial that I started to think a little bit more about the concept of the environment of professional sport, right? And how intellectual stimulus may improve it, may increase it. And from there, we kind of jumped into this project a bit, because it kind of related to this, understanding the environment of teams and team building, right? And where we're at in sport with so much biometric data, with so much analytics data, historical and whatnot, all of that is incredible for predictive models that allow people to make decisions, right? But it only takes into account certain variables, and they're all really kind of hard quantifiable values. These values as in how exit velocity, rotational power, and then you just have the regular statistics coming from performance, right? RBIs, average, home runs. But then now you can take biometric data off every person and see how they function biomechanically, put sensors on their bodies, measure them off power plates, how much force they're pushing into the ground. These are all just hard values that happen that you can track. Mm-hmm. And what I feel like in professional sport, and we've talked about this extensively, is the decision making in professional sport is now based on these hard values and these models that basically mitigate for risk and poor decision making. But by only focusing on these values, these quantitative values, what I feel like, and what we've talked about extensively, Jay, is that it's taken away the subjectivity of the game. And when we say subjectivity, I'm talking about the character, the kind of the heart, the intuition, the experiential expertise that we all know and love belongs in baseball. We know and love baseball and professional sport because we understand that camaraderie, that team unit, that emulates the relationships we have in our own lives, and how those fluctuate really impact performance, just like it impacts the performance of us in our everyday lives. And this thing, which is so kind of beautiful, because it can be positive, negative, it's something you experience daily, is experienced for these players in a team setting. And when you look at it that way, you then even understand, even to an nth degree, that winning and performance in professional sport, it will always have a component of subjectivity that is based on character and chemistry in a team. And if you can't build a team with that part of the equation accounted for, then the equation is incomplete. And
so buddy, let me cut you off here, right? So here's one of the things, again, right, that I love what you're saying is you're talking about the thing that people don't talk about, right? Where we all know it's there. And for a lot of people who may be listening, some of the armchair quarterbacks that follow whatever sport, we'll hear people say things like, well, they signed this guy again. And the armchair quarterback will go, oh my God, that guy is so old. He's done. He's over the hill. What are we wasting time, energy, money on this guy for? And all of a sudden you'll hear that comment like, he's great in the locker room.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy that can help with the younger guys coming on up. And, for the lay person, a lot of us walk away and go, oh my God. But the value of that person to help mold the future of your program, your team, your franchise, it's invaluable. And if you just don't know, you don't know, right?
Yep.
And what I'm just like in love with your concept here is you're talking about the power of the development of culture. And you're talking about the power and the strength and the importance of developing people.
Yes. And Jay, I want to dissect exactly what you just said there with that's a great example that's relatable to all kinds of people, is that veteran that you bring in to try to create culture, right? And I'm going to even take it a step further, because you played, and as players, we can identify those types of people that change the culture in a clubhouse, right?
Yeah.
Because we live and we breathe in that clubhouse, and that social interaction happens to us daily. Now, as decision makers, administrators, front office people, they don't live in that clubhouse every day, right? So this is where we have some potential for making just that small decision, right, incorrect. And if you make that small decision incorrect, it has a huge impact. From a business standpoint, there's no return on investment, right? So understanding who that one person is and their impact, and getting that decision right is crucial. And it can't be just from word of mouth between other owners. It can't be just from news articles and reporters who get to come into the clubhouse for 45 minutes a day, right? It can't just be from some camaraderie that was created from that player with coaches or the front office. That's not what you're looking for. You're looking for from real players who experience the interaction. Those are the people that you need to talk to and understand. Those are the people you need to get information from to really identify these people, because I truly believe culture changing people are they're not the obvious ones.
Right.
They're the ones that don't necessarily care about being distinguished as that. They care about other things that they value, and that's what makes them impactful. So I'm sorry, I wanted to dissect that for a second. The overall thought and observation is absolutely correct. I think that a decision maker who wants to do that to create culture is on the right path, but there's ways to do it better, more accurately, and more effectively for their team. Because at the end of the day, if they miss, then they may not go back to making that decision again. Because yes, as the armchair quarterback would say, that was a waste of money. No return on that. It did nothing. So right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's fantastic, because, I think one of the things that makes what you're doing so special and yet so controversial at the same time rests in my mind in two things. And the first one is, and I've used this line with you before in other conversations, is I used a line from the movie For the Love of the Game. And there's that scene where he's going on his first date, and it's one of my most favorite movies, to be honest with you. And my wife still rips on me because she's like, you're not even a baseball guy, and you're crying, right? And you know how to end. I'm like, shut up, right? Shut up.
It's all the same emotion. It's all the same emotion.
But it's the scene where the two of them are having dinner for the first time, and she says something like, tell me about, what you do. And he says, well, I play baseball, and, this is how many times I've played and how many times I've lost and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, oh my God, you've lost a lot, right? And then he says, well, yeah, but I played a lot. And it goes into the analytics of it, right? He's like, yeah. Really, right? Trey does the old, the guy thing, try to save the game.
Yeah.
But he says, this line, and it's, in baseball, we count everything. That's all we do is count.
Hmm.
So I bring that line up because, you know, the stuff that you're talking about is stuff that you can't measure and put it out on a back of a baseball card. You
Yep.
can't put it in the program. You can't
Yep.
put it out there, right? And again, going back to the armchair quarterback or the armchair GM who's watching the team, watching the game, and he could be even one of those guys that shows up with his book and he's the guy who, you know, scores the whole game. And God bless those guys. There's no stat column for this, right? There's not even a value column for this,
Yep.
right? And that's what you're really talking about here, right?
Hmm.
You know, a lot of pro coaches in sports, even down to college, right? Monday rolls around and they do their inventory, right? And they go from guy one to guy whoever, 35. And they're doing an inventory of who they're lining up for this week. For those guys, for the people who don't understand that, what do you say to them? Like, how do you qualify? You especially being an analytics guy on top
Yeah.
of an incredible pro, right? And the game of counting. Like, how do you come back to that? How do you come
So
back to the guy who can't, you know?
it's it's a great question, right? And I'm not going to go around it. I'll just be upfront. It's difficult, right? It's challenging because it's not straightforward. It's not as easy as you get a hit, you don't get a hit. You throw a strike, you don't throw a strike. You throw a pitch, and you add one more pitch onto the pitch count, right?
Yeah.
Very easy. But let's start it from backward. From let's re-engineer it, or let's walk back. Let's deconstruct it, right? Right now, how we do performance-based metrics in decision making, we have huge sophisticated models just coming from computing power, right? Every buzzword you'll hear, AI, deep learning, machine learning, everything you've seen on in advertising to sell you things, that stuff exists. It is powerful, and it's able to happen because information flow is getting enough information in real time, right? Now, I can draw a comparison there because there's a relationship with what you just said. We take and we chart everything in baseball, right? So baseball by itself is like the AWS of information. It literally tracks every single day in real time information and writes it down because it has the opportunity to, because it runs simulations, i.e. games every day, right? So we have the information engine that comes into it. We have the sophisticated analytics tools that they're already using to make decisions based on performance only. So we have things there, right? The only question is the quantifiable variables. Because if we get those, right? If we get those, the models should work. And if we get those with consistent information flow into the models, then we have something. And if you look at it from that perspective, you have what's available now, the ability to do it given that you enter the right variables, inputs, quantified values for qualitative observation or experiment or data extraction. So that's the crucial aspect of it, is how do you get this data that's relevant?
Yeah.
How do you get this data that is relevant? And that takes some innovation. That takes some perspective. That takes some experience. And this is what's interesting, that it was just kind of opened up wide for me as I've gone through to school and studied data analytics modeling, right? One of my classes in my last quarter was it was awesome. I took with Professor Vincent Nice called Customer Analytics. It was for marketing and all these different analytics tools, from logistic regression, neural nets, boosted forest, radiant forest, all the way through, right? Simulation. But it was for like targeting marketing.
Yeah.
But what's beautiful about these data analytics tools is they're available and accessible and applicable across so many different industries, or they're available to solve so many different problems. And point being is, if you can have the insight into the game of what you feel is possibly important to determine the character of a player, or maybe a character profile, and you can come up with certain activities, separate environment from each other. Like you can run team building exercises. You can do all kinds of, this is where it gets kind of creative. You can start pulling out qualitative data, matching it and quantifying it based on the amount, and then entering it into these analytics tools to come up with predictive models on combinations of teams that may increase that may be able to evaluate per person an increase in winning percentage or a decrease, right? Because all you're trying to really do is come up with a combination of people. There, you can then continue to track this, right? And for me personally, I think one of the keys to it is being able to evaluate players, not from a front office point of view,
right?
Not from a fan point of view, but that might be beneficial. I can talk about that later. Self-evaluation, cross-evaluation from players upon players, right? Self-evaluation of players from people that work in that clubhouse for those players. All of these things get you inside information over time, eliminate bias, and can get you really to understand how players interact together, because that's literally where the magic is, player interaction with each other. And that's where the magic is for every team. Can you get at that? And that's where the innovative side is. Can you get at the social interaction of teams? And if you can, then it would be extremely valuable because the tools are there to analyze it. And it's in an environment where interaction is mandated, as we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
You have a consistent flow of information of that. Like, well, and why wouldn't you? It's so important.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I'll just say this. There's a couple things that I got to bring light on. I think the first thing that you said about 3 minutes ago, which is so important, it's the key of everything you're saying, is that being able to stand up as an organization, as a program, and say that besides hits, runs, pitches thrown, power, strength, the big column for us is integrity of the person. Mm-hmm. The emotional side of that person, right? That is a column that's a must for us. So the first organization that steps up and says the quality of a guy is just as important as hitting percentage, that's how this ball starts rolling.
Yeah.
And that's where the key, I think, comes in. The moment that you get a group that says, we feel strong enough, confident enough, and intelligent enough, shall we say, to put it on out there, whether people like it or not, they're going to criticize us or not. But one of our value characteristics in our program is this element, and it's the essence of the person, however you digest that. That's the person who's going to grab what you're saying and run. But to tell people a little something about the power of what you said after that, when you talk about that locker room, you talk about that clubhouse, you talk about the guys working together and the science of what you're talking about. And I think I may have shared this with you before, but I'll share this with other people. One of my mentors growing up and doing my postdoctorate work was a guy in town, and I don't know if he'd like his name mentioned or not, so I won't say it, but he has a very healthy practice in Del Mar. And he was a guy that basically kept me sane as I was doing my post-grad work. Has an incredible gig. And let me tell you about this, and it relates to exactly what you're talking about with the chemistry of the guys. He works with another doc up in LA, and these guys have a battery of assessments where together they basically qualify all of the people that we see on reality shows. So they have the secret sauce for Survivor. They have the secret sauce for Big Brother. They have the secret sauce for The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, where it's, guess what? By week 3, this guy's going to go nuts. And within 2 hours, these two are going to be scrapping for sure. And this one over here, this is going to be the sweetheart of the series, right? So it doesn't matter what show you watch, the same elements are always there. The geek, the freak, the nerd, the turd, the boozer, schmoozer, and the one we fall in love with, right? You know, the dark horse. There's going to be the person who rocks the boat and maybe gets the most out of people. And then there's going to be the person who kind of does that, dark horse kind of thing. And
Yeah.
saw this coming. But what do we have? We have a secret formula where, 9 out of 10 episodes or 9 out of 10 seasons, it's going to be wow, right? Hearing you say this, you're the person trying to bring that understanding to the forefront, not just as it's going to be good TV, but this is something that we know exists. It works. All the guys talk about it. Why are we not qualifying this?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah, I know you and I have talked about this in the past, just having coffee together. How many pros we know you played with that would say, you know what, I don't necessarily want to do the athletic thing all over again, but I wish I could just have a locker room and all the guys could meet up every day.
Exactly. That's how important it is. That's how deeply felt it is. It's such an emotional thing. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Keep going.
No, it's great.
Well, no, I feel like you asked me that question. I'll go into the weeds on how to do it, how to get data from it. But you're exactly right. Let me point out that was a beautiful example of how you can quantify qualitative characteristics, intangible characteristics. And that's in a different industry for the purpose of entertainment, right? Let me go back really, because I want to just simplify what I said, because it's really good for me to try to simplify. You're exactly right. It takes an organization to realize that chemistry and cohesiveness of their team is what really ultimately gets them to their end goal, right? And it takes them to acknowledge that we need to try to account for that equation better, because every organization kind of understands that. I mean, it's built into sport, right? It's so deeply rooted in it. It's why we love it. And they account for it by different things. Some people are just so performance data driven that they just check off a box and they use just some standard methods to evaluate, but they got to account for it some way. It takes the organization to want to get it right, to realize that information is there, to understand that the analytics tools of today are sophisticated enough to handle that information and produce something that is valuable as far as team composition and creating a team with chemistry involved. And from there, you come up with the ways to pull out relevant data from baselines to observational to third-party reporting, all the different examples. I don't want to go into the examples because I can talk about that for days, because I've lived in that clubhouse. You've lived it. You can just think of them right now. It's like, what would be pertinent to understanding a person's character? You can go dry as from like what time they show up at the field. Or you can go to like all these different things. They're just available. Like you can geolocate your player and see if he even goes into the weight room or the training room.
But it's funny, right?
You can get even more. So I mean, you get this. It's able to be done sophisticatedly or just from a very basic standpoint. The fact that I'm just arguing it needs to be done, right? Like start with that. Like you said, the organization needs to start and acknowledge that. And you're exactly right. Yeah.
So let me throw this at you, right? One of the things that you just turned you've turned another switch off in my head, and I'm going to change direction with you a little bit on this, is we know inherently as guys, right? And just people, but we'll just talk as guys, right? If we were guys going to school together and we hung out together and we played sports together, baseball, I know you also played basketball and football, and we just went and we hung out as guys. And we said, okay, guess what? We're going to play at 1:00. Let's get the boys together. We're going to meet at the parking lot and we're going to go, right? We know inherently between you and I and the rest of the boys that when we start making the phone calls, and now you can text, right? Which is another thing, like how easy it would be today to do what we used to do as kids 100 years ago, but kids today are not doing it, right? Like how easy would it be today to put together a game when you and I were kids rather than the 3,000 phone calls? But anyhow, we knew back then Johnny's always going to be late. Mm-hmm. We knew that certain gear wasn't going to show up or the ball wasn't going to get there or whatever, right? because Johnny's always late and Mikey always comes with Johnny. And those two, we know they're going to be walking in with snacks and eating sandwiches when they walk in, right? And they're 20 minutes late. And we've made everyone late, right? We're like, come on. And then ball drops, we start playing, and it's, those are just the guys. That same essence of friendship, community, whatever else you want to talk about, just knowing people, it's the same stuff that shows up in that clubhouse. Mm-hmm. It's the same stuff that shows up in that locker room. It's the same stuff. So my question to you is, if we've all grown up with this stuff as kids, why do you think pro sports is so not wanting to talk about or acknowledge the same stuff we went through when we were playing in the Sandlot? Like, why is that an issue?
I think it's a great question. First, I think, and this is a whole nother conversation. What you talked about from this personal point of view is, we know this even a little bit beyond sport, right? Like, it gives you an idea of how applicable team building for production is across industries. But that's a whole nother conversation. Yeah. But why does professional sport not want to talk? Well, it's interesting. We talk about this, and I think you enlightened me to this beautiful concept, right? I think you talked about the existence of that gang mentality, and this is kind of putting the horse before the cart before the horse right now, because I'm going to go back to it. Is that professional sport, when you do talk about character at that level, is seen as a bit soft, right? I want to say it's seen as, if you build a team on character at that level with that amount of money, and it fails because you didn't account for performance, well, you did it wrong, because professional sport, anything at the elite level is gauged on it's gauged on performance. So what is the best way to increase performance is get higher level performers to do that, right? And character now takes a second seat. But character understood, and this is, we're going to come back to what your enlightenment to me, I think it was a month ago. Character understood from that point of view as looking at it, it's incorrect. It's incorrect, because the certain characteristics you're looking for in a team, they vary across players. And that's where the combinations come into effect. So when you think about character from combinations, that combination doesn't need to have every player be so characteristically sound in that clubhouse, right? You need to have the right balance of people that equals an optimized performance to increase your high level performers. You would love to have your best player be the best guy in that clubhouse. And you've played sport. That's not necessarily the case. A lot of times it's not, right? Yeah. But this is where we talk about, and let me bring back into this gang mentality, right? That you may have, I don't know, can I cuss on this thing?
Go for it.
Yeah. You may have a bunch of assholes that can play the game and get things done and hit home runs, score goals, score touchdowns, right? Ultimately, depending on their character and how that entire team works as a system, a living, breathing thing, they will perform, but what they create in culture for the rest of the team, because you need performance from the whole team to win to some degree. Yeah. If they deter or prohibit or hinder performance from the other side of the team, then their performance is negated, right? It's simple. It's a zero sum in a sense. Yeah. So the point is, if you're in a gang mentality where you have people of high character who can relate to those high-end performing assholes, be able to understand them, empathize with them, not necessarily think that they're right, but realize that, and I love this comment you told me, yeah, my teammate's an asshole, but that's my asshole, right? Yeah. I love that. Yeah. And it takes someone with a certain characteristic to understand that, yeah, to be able to be in that clubhouse and make that cohesive, and optimize performance. And I go back to this because I like to talk in like exacts here. On a team, I don't know if it's 25. I don't know if they expand the roster to 26, whatever. Let's just start with 25 guys on a baseball team roster that's active in the major leagues. There's only 25 of those guys on that team. Every guy, every unit, that make up that 25 is important. And considering that it's just a small number, the combinations that you can, there's a lot of combinations, exponential amount of combinations, but it's not like you have a massive team. The point is that you can look at the different combinations of those 25 guys, understanding the importance of every one of those positions, and try to optimize it as best you can, whether it's all performance based or whether one guy has a little less performance because his character can create better performance for other people. This is where we get at it, right? This isn't like this is soft or fluffy, right? This isn't like, oh, everyone's a great guy on the team. No, this is where I think this is the misconception. Going back to answering your question, the misconception of why you don't talk about character in professional sport is because this isn't a fluffy game. This is business. This is get it done. This is elite level. But character doesn't necessarily have to be all rainbows and unicorns.
Right.
Character should be adding value to your performance and your performers. And you can do that with people of high character that aren't fluffy and soft, that still perform, but increase other people's performance. Because everything is interconnected in a team. It's a living, breathing thing. And the social interactivity happens every day.
But you see, so you've just taken everything we've talked about to the next level. And what you've done is in our conversation today, we've talked about the thing that we don't talk about, and that's character and the value of it. We've talked about how do you measure that and the importance of doing that and acknowledging it. But now, if we're doing the Simon Sinek and we're talking about the why we need to do this, you just talked about the how. And the how is understanding that a character person isn't a fluffy person. It could be the most, it could be the person who could be the quietest, most silent person in the room, but yet when he or she walks into the locker room, everything goes silent.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Exactly.
In my mind, I got to tell you what goes through my head when we have this conversation. We've had it a couple times. I call what you're talking about now the character of the person. It doesn't have to be rainbows and unicorns. I call it Italian wedding planning. I'm going with this, right? Italian wedding.
Love it.
Right? We're getting married. And trust me, ladies, if you could see this guy, you'd think why I'd say that. But here's the deal. We're getting married, and we've all had this scenario. We're inviting Uncle Lou. Uncle Lou comes, and we know within 20 minutes of sitting down, this guy's going to be breaking balls. We've got Aunt Susan, who's going to be the one driving everyone crazy. And we've got, that other guy who seems to come to every wedding, and we're not too sure how he's related. And he makes everyone go, oh, my God, who's that guy? And now we need to position those people at tables, right? And we say to ourselves, who in the hell are we going to put with Uncle Lou? Right?
Yeah.
Who can take him and not complain? Who can understand him and just nod it off? Who can take that, right? And Aunt Susan, who complains about everything, who can handle that one? And who can keep an eye on that guy, right? So I'm lucky to have people in my life that when these scenarios pop up in different ways, they're the people that come up to me and say, hey, put me with Lou. I got Lou. Right?
Great people.
But that's what we're talking about.
Yes.
We're talking about that guy, that gal, that person who can come in and say, listen, I can keep the boat stable. Don't worry, bring in that asshole. It's going to help our team. And the ones that complain, I'm going to keep them in check. But what I'm also going to do is I'm going to help keep him in check. Because if he thinks he's going to come in and rule the roost, that ain't going to happen. We're not going to inhibit what he does for us, but we're not going to let him think that he can just come and bulldoze everything down.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times when you think about this person who creates the calm, right? What are they really, really doing? These are the people who have that deep understanding of people and knowing people know that a lot of people hate change.
You know what? That's such a great, that's a great example. I just had a thought in my head that just popped in. I'm gonna write it down because I love this concept of because you talked about it, those people around you as a culture of people, right? That is the most important thing to controlling that situation, that wedding, right? And I would almost argue that you should start with those people first in an organization, and then with your free agent signings and who you bring in, you create such a culture of those people that when those people come in, they fall in line, right? So you start adding the performance elite to that culture, right? It shouldn't be the other way around.
No,
it should never be the other way around. And this is what's interesting. I actually wanted to go. I'm going to have to go think about some of the organizations, how they do it, because I don't know if they're doing it purposely. You hope you would. Maybe that is some of those organizations you hear about that just never have a problem with culture, that continuously win consistently, whether they have free agent signs, whether they don't, whether they develop internally. But it's like you said, it's having those people that you loved around you, that you are accessible, that are there already.
right.
To be like, I got this. All right, we're signing these guys. We're ready to perform. We'll take care. We'll be the glue.
Right.
Let those guys do what they do.
But to your credit, in saying that, I think you have to do that, because if you go back to the wedding planning model, right, it's to say that I can't sit with Lou, I can't sit with Susan, and I can't babysit that guy. Like, unless you position my stall in the middle of the clubhouse, right? I can't do it. Like, I can't be in three places at one time. Coach, GM, I can't, right? So don't get me wrong. I have no problems sitting with each three of them. I have no problems being, the rubber man that you need and to plug the holes. I have no problem. But I only have so many fingers and I can only stretch so far, right? So it's again to be saying to ourselves, one of the most brilliant things that was ever said to me in a recruiting trip that I was on was this coach who took us around said, all these great things about his school and why you should be coming to the school. And one of the guys on the trip said to him, "Oh my God, with all of the stuff that you have and the name that you have, you could have the best of the best here across the nation. Like, everybody would want to come here." And all the guys who were on the trip were like nodding, yeah. And he said, "You know what? That's what everyone thinks, but that's not how we do what we do here."
Yeah.
And that's the guy who said to me, we look at our team as a chessboard.
Yes.
And every year we lose a piece, every year we gain a piece, right? So whoever that person is, right, in my opinion, the guy we're talking about is the queen, technically, because if you're bringing to chess, because this is the person who's mobile and agile, can move anywhere across the board, and knows with this guy, I need to be like this. And with this guy, I need to be like that, right? You look at the other players on that chessboard, there's only one person who can go in any direction as far and wide as they want. That's what makes it a strategic game. And that's no different than having your strategic planning for your team, just like you need your strategic planning for your wedding, because you could say, I do today, but after this ceremony, it could be divorced tomorrow. So
I think the chessboard's excellent, right? Like, and I think that teams, they use that kind of, they kind of use that chessboard mentality, but only on performance.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Only on combinations of performance. I need my 3-4 hitter to deliver. I need this guy to score. I need whoever this is all performance. I need rebounds, everything, right? Maybe there should just be 2 chessboards, and then aggregating together is maybe somewhere closer to the answer for optimizing performance. To getting the sum of those 2 together are greater than the sum of both of them apart, right? I don't know if I even said that right. I might not have, but
the essence was there, buddy. The essence
was
there.
It
carry
sounded
the
right, but
carry the
someone
one
else could correct it. Exactly. I had one more thought on just on the sensitivity of what we're talking about, right? How nuanced it is, how this social interaction is so important, right? Like, I mean, you could make an argument. This is an example, it's on a tangent, but just where seats are placed, because you were talking about seating, right? Seats are placed in a clubhouse. You know how important that is,
Oh,
right? And
massive, massive.
that's how sensitive it is. You could probably correlate like the winning percentage of a team on seating arrangement in combinations in that clubhouse, right? And
100%.
and you would hope that someone besides the clubhouse manager would put people in seats next to each other, and it would possibly not be dictated only on what the players' preferences are, right? That you would be doing it for a reason. And sometimes you can kind of see that, but that's how sensitive it is, right? Like
The stories in pro sports that exist on just locker room placement
yes,
alone,
yes.
you could have 10 miniseries on that.
It's a
People
joke.
have no concept. They have no clue. They have no clue.
There's everything in there. There's drama. there's excitement. You know, there's just the interaction at your locker. I mean, you could literally do a full Netflix 4 seasons on it.
You could.
And that's like, what is the very like base, like what is the very essence of that whole interaction is simply how people kind of get along, right?
But
Literally, that's how people
it's
interact and make themselves better or not better. Like,
but it's
that's reality TV, that's
but
entertainment, and it's also part of how we actually perform together as a team.
so you know what? Here's something, and I'll segue this to today because we could be here for days. Here's what I would be doing if I could be the silent parrot on your shoulder when you go out to explain to teams and programs they know what you're going to do, the value of this, right?
Yeah.
I would love to be beside the guy who might be doing the oofa, right? You know, the Italians, whenever we hear something we don't want to hear, oofa, here we go, right? I would love to be beside that guy to use just this example alone. It's to say, you're not buying in, you're not feeling it, you're not thinking it's something that we really need to validate and acknowledge. Let me paint a scenario for you: GM, coach, general manager, whatever it may be. I want you to think back on what it was like to be on the team you loved playing on the most. Tell me about that team. Oh, well, we had great guys, and then everything was great, and the locker room was awesome, everything was fantastic. Great. Okay. Think about the time when you're the most happiest and things were going the best. Oh, yeah. It was great. This time we're winning, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Then I want you to think about this. I want you to envision that you came back into that clubhouse after a long road trip where things went great, and we moved your stall across the clubhouse.
Mm-hmm.
You went in, you started taking off your stuff, and you realized your stall ain't there. And someone came up and said, hey, Jimmy, listen, hey, no big deal. It's no big stuff, right? But the new guy coming in is really close with this guy. And, I know that, you get along with everybody. So we're just going to move you over there. You're now down the road. How would that affect you? Would that have affected your mojo in hitting? Would that have affected your emotions? Would you have started thinking about, well, does he not want me here? Or does he not like me here? Or well, is it going to start doing stuff up here? And the answer is 100% yes.
Yes.
And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the stuff that we don't want to talk about, but we also know is completely valuable. And it could either be the rocket fuel for a team.
Mm-hmm.
It could also be the galvanizing piece that takes that little engine from the outhouse to the penthouse, or it could be the kryptonite that brings down every superpower team, which You having the knowledge that you have, the experience you have as an athlete at the world's most elite levels, you probably could sit back in a Starbucks and hear people talk about certain powerhouse teams which have the biggest payrolls, and people just talking like armchair quarterbacks who never did more than
Yep.
AV baseball
Mm-hmm.
in high school, and hear them say, I don't understand. And this is where your must just blow up and go, dude, you just don't know the locker room.
Yeah.
You
It's
just don't know.
and it's a beautiful statement, because in that statement is 80% of how these people live. Like, you live 80% of your day is spent with your teammates, not on the field. The rest of the time is spent performing together in the public eye. And how important that locker room is, knowing that locker room is crucial. It's
Yeah.
crucial to a decision maker. It's crucial to your manager. I mean, it's crucial to even the players to understand what is necessary to change in that locker room. You can even say that, you can make that argument. It's and once you go back to exactly like what you said, like, you have these teams that, they play each other. You have teams that are better than other teams. But let's just say you have two teams that are equal in every aspect of performance and every biometric data. Let's just do a little bit. They're equal, right? One team is going to win, one team is going to lose. And it's kind of the reason why we watch sport, because we love this matchup, right? We love this matchup. We ever ask, like, really, you say the performance, or there was a break here or there that happened, and those may be the defining outcome of that game. But there's also another component there that we kind of know is sitting and looming, is that how are these teams functioning together? Because I just started that. How are these teams functioning together? Teams, right? Team sport, together. Everything all equal, then that has a chance to really show up, but we can't quantify it. We may never get used to talking about it regularly.
Mm-hmm.
And it is kind of the driving force, one of the huge driving forces for how we love and watch sport. So it's this contradictions we have with being an armchair quarterback and not understanding the locker room. But you watch the sports because you love the drama of it, and you just don't understand what's behind all this stuff besides the performance. But you know it's there, and it's part of the addictive quality of sport. It's this kind of that's why it's so fascinating and interesting to talk about, because it's there all the time. It's not, and it's indirect, and it's not very noticeable. It's intangible, right?
It's totally, and I look at this like I have guys in my life who I haven't seen in say 15 years, and if I sent them a text, they'd be here tomorrow to help me.
Yep.
But with that said, I also know that there's another extension of the guys I played with who I wasn't as close with as I wish I was, looking back on it now. And any person who would defy this stuff that we talk about, that is not talked about, because we're truly, again, I'm pounding this home today, we're talking about things that we don't talk about.
Mm-hmm.
That person who'd be a naysayer, who would huff and oof-ah at it, I would say to that guy, so you're telling me that every single day through your high school life, through your college life, and your pro life, you went and had lunch with a different person every single day? Is that what you're telling me?
Mm-hmm. That's a great point.
Bullshit.
Yep.
Bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
You're telling me that you were the guy when the clubhouse managers turned around and said, okay, we need to shuffle things around. Who's okay moving their stall from here to here? You're telling me you were the guy that always put his hand up first. That's what you're telling me. You never sat with the same guy for lunch more than once or twice a year. You never went to the movies with the same guy more than once all season long. You never did. Horseshit.
Yep.
Horseshit. You're telling me you're the guy that has 2,000 best friends, right?
Yeah.
Or you have a deeper sense of psychosis, which more basically we diagnosed with the cows come home, which is that of everyone's your best friend, right? Like that's what we're talking about here, right? Let's just talk about the things that we know existed in the school parking lot, in the sand lot. That's all we're talking about. And what is the value of that?
Yeah.
I mean,
No.
it's no different than what you're talking about right now, because when we know that Johnny's always going to be late and Mikey's coming with him, what did we tell those guys when we got older? We didn't tell them that the game was starting at 11. We told them the game was starting at right? And it's just because we knew the boys, right? We just knew the boys. And eventually 10 years, someone said something and they're like, I can't believe you did this. Well, listen, what's the worst thing that happened? We got to hang out with each other more, right?
Let me just for that naysayer, right? That person, this is just kind of a simple, probably kind of too basic, but for everyone, right? You can think about it in these terms. And it's not, I want to start with the negative first and then go to the positive. It's always easier for people to understand some negative first.
Yes.
Has there ever been an experience for anyone where you did an activity and someone that was part of that activity with you made you worse, made you not as good as you might have been, dragged you down, right? For any reason. Everyone's going to say, yeah, I've experienced that because that's obvious. Now let's think about the opposite side, because I don't think we ever think about it. Have you ever done an activity with anyone or anyone that, like else that was part of it that made you better than what you were? Now this one's subtle because we always have an idea that, oh, that's who we are, is that better person, right? But think about it. Think about those are just, and I'm guarantee you can come up with certain instances just in any activity, anything in your life where you can come up with, and you can come up like, yeah, you know what, that person kind of, I did feel like that person made me better. We worked together well. All those different things are the translation for someone pushed you and made you better, right? And it's hard to identify, but you know that is the case, because we don't want to, if we looked at ourselves in the mirror and just honest and we said, yeah, you know what, that guy, that experience, someone pushed me to be better and made me better. And that's true, because I'm right here and I was there. So if it's that subtle in just everyone's lives, you know that like in high pressure situations, how much more magnified that sense possibly could be. And I think, you know, if you kind of put it in that perspective, it's like, okay, naysayer, you've never had an experience where someone made you worse, and I guess you've never had an experience where someone made you better. Yeah. You're the one person in the world that's never had those experiences.
Never had that. Yeah, no, I love it. I love what you're saying. Again, we're talking about the things that we don't talk about. We're talking about the things we don't talk about. And what really frustrates me in a good way for you, which makes me love what you're doing, is we don't talk about the things that we know we should be talking about, but yet we all live them and experience them. This is not a foreign concept. All we're talking about is the importance of telling Johnny and Mikey the game starts a half an hour earlier, because we know their character. That's all we're talking about.
That's it.
And what's the value of that? And let's not undermine the value of that. You know, I'll give you this, right? One of my closest friends back home, his name's Anthony. And no matter what we did, where we lived in this suburban area when we all met as kids, it took us almost 2 hours to get to the local mall to watch a movie. And this guy, still to this day, is the organizer of everything. The organizer of everything, right? And he was brilliant at it. And I remember as we became closer and closer and closer, he's like the brother I should have had, right? I remember sitting in his kitchen as he'd be making all the phone calls. And he'd be saying, we got to tell this guy that we're leaving at 9, but really we're leaving at 11. And this guy, we can call him at 10:35, because he'll be ready in a blink of an eye, right? Yeah. And it's the power of knowing people, the power of acknowledging what you know, and just putting it into effect so that we all as a team can be successful. And that's all it's about. That's all.
I'm going to hammer that home a little more. I'm going to take it even apart, that telling Johnny to be there 15 minutes, or tell them the game starts 15 minutes earlier, right? Let's just go from a basic kind of like psychological evaluation of that whole scenario. If you don't tell Johnny to get there 15 minutes before the game, that's game time, he shows up late. How does Johnny feel? He feels like his friends started the game without him, right? How do his friends feel when they show up? This guy doesn't care. He doesn't give a shit about us because he's here. He wants to be part of this game, right? But, worst case, you just get in a fist fight, right? Best case, you get in a fist fight and you handle it then. Worst case, it just festers in its resentment, and guess what? Johnny doesn't show up to the game, and Johnny doesn't get invited. And maybe Johnny's a real good player, and people really like Johnny, and he makes everyone better, but he just can't show up on time. That's no good for him. So everyone loses. So the value of your game just went down. Your experience just decreased, right? So that's just that's just really simplified. But you can just walk it out and be like, what are the options? What happens here? How do people feel? Or do you have someone, the organizer, someone who has the empathy to understand both sides, someone who wants to play the game and wants to play it at a high level and says, Johnny, show up, the game's at 10:15. That's an easy fix because it makes sense to him immediately. And maybe it didn't make sense to everyone else, but it did to him. That guy's pretty damn valuable. And I think everyone would agree on that.
Oh, buddy. I mean, God bless you. I love you so much. I remember, I'll leave it with this. I remember the first time that one of the boys decided that we're going to try and make a run of the movies. And we're like 13, 14. And our buddy Anthony, the organizer, couldn't go. And I remember getting on the phone, and one of our closest friends still today, Dominic, says, well, where's our boy? I go, he's not coming. The organizer's not coming? No. Oh, this is going to be a shit show.
Let's just get in a fight first and then go to the movie.
Oh, God. We had guys going across town in 5 different directions. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Talk about. Buddy, listen, I could talk to you all day, and I want to value and respect your time. We're definitely going to do part 2 of this.
This is a blast, Jay. Love you too, man. This was fun. I
hope you're safe, eh? Everything be good.
Yeah, I appreciate you as well, Jay. This is my first podcast I think I've ever been on.
You got more, baby. We got more. I didn't tell you this. It's a 10-part series. I didn't tell you this.
I gotta tell you, Jay, you sent me the text. I thought we were just gonna catch up on the project, and you're like, I'm gonna start recording. I'm like, you just hit me. Oh, I'm on a podcast.
Baby, we're cooking. We're cooking. I invite you to dinner. You're working the barbecue, buddy. You're not a bystander. That's how us Italians work, buddy.
It was great. I love just jumping in. It was perfect.
I love it. Listen, you be well. I'm sending you a hug. I'm sending you a long distance hug.
Big hug.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon, Jay. Thanks.
Bye, buddy.